Clone High, a criminally short-lived MTV series created by the inseparable duo Phil Lord and Chris Miller that was cancelled, slowly gained a dedicated cult following, and skyrocketed in popularity. Like half a year ago because of epic memeage.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
Yeah, you know why. But seriously, so many crazy things happen in only 13 episodes. It gets so absurd at points that I can kind of see why potential new viewers back then maybe didn't vibe with it while it was airing. Then again, it's being brought back, so really how will it not succeed now? But back then, they literally had to explain the concept to you in the theme song in order for you to understand it. But to be fair, it's like the best opening intro ever. Involving clones. So, I don't know, there's only 13 episodes to choose from. Wow, really raising the stakes high there. But it seemed fun, plus I'm a big fan of the show and everything. I've probably watched it like 5 times, so really I'm gonna go all in with this one. Keep in mind that this is all my opinion, and virtually every episode has something good about it. So if your favorite episode is low, we can have a civil discussion in the comments about it. That's perfectly fine. I've never made a video like this before, so let's just see what happens. This is Clone High, worst to best. Remember when I said every episode has something good about it? I wasn't lying. I really like the drag race scene at the end. So did the internet.
Nothing bad ever happens to
Clone High.
What?
I don't know how big of a hot take this is going to be, but the rest of this episode, apart from a couple gags, is completely unremarkable. The humor is either contrived or predictable, and the stuff with Gandhi becoming a truck driver could have worked, but it's just really uninteresting. They also end scenes in such a weird way sometimes, like it'll have a good thing going, then immediately cut to the next set piece when no progress was made more than a few times, which becomes distracting. Seriously, go back and rewatch this episode if you don't believe me. It's not that great. This is pretty much the worst that this iconic series has to offer. Thankfully, it's all uphill from here. I have mixed feelings on this one. On one hand, I could count all the great character moments and zingers. I especially love how Cleo's written here. Like, she actually somewhat cares about her relationship with Abe, and based on her behavior in past episodes, you'd think she's acting clueless, but no, there's more to it than I expected, and it all culminates into a super emotional ending. On the other hand, don't get on that plane. Like, I get it, it's a parody of this type of televised melodrama, and it kind of works the first time, but as soon as they make the skunk say it, I just lose faith in the joke. You're just repeating it over and over, but with different characters saying it. Isn't that so hilarious? How is this better than what you're mocking? Also, yeah, the B-plot is just Looney Tunes. It's here, I guess. Again, I know you guys love the catchphrase. I do too, but I don't see the point. It's just a distraction. Like, I would have loved to see more focus put on Gandhi rocking the G-spot. Come on, man. That's so much more interesting to me. There's a lot more that could have been explored there with the rap lifestyle, in my opinion. The banger tunes make up for it, I guess, but again, mixed feelings here. Abe and JFK are battling it out to become the student body president. There are a lot of great memorable gags in this one, but there's just problems with the pacing. It's got a lot of that really unsubtle, obvious humor that Clone High just relies on, and in other better episodes, the jokes manage to actually move the story along for the most part, but here it can often waste time depending on the joke it's focusing on. It's not all bad, it really picks up steam in the final third with the actual debate, and I find myself at least smiling or chuckling every minute or so because it's still really funny, but the episode's kind of frustrating in spots. Extra points for the allow me to dry you off with my pants scene and having Marilyn Manson sing about the food pyramid though. Shit's classic. I would say this is the most standard episode of Clone High, even though a majority of it is filled to the brim with out-of-context clips, as always.
Try the churros.
It's got a fairly straightforward sequence of events. There's the setup with Joan's house burning down, pretty average circumstances. Then she moves in with Cleo, and chaos ensues. Every character here deals with conflict in very amusing ways, and I appreciate this aspect a lot because it manages to creatively tie all these unrelated stories together, even if the way they get there is odd, to say the least. There isn't a lot going against it. My only major gripe is that it takes 7 minutes for the jokes to really ramp up, but once it gets going, it's a wild ride. I gotta give a direct mention to the Nork presentation, which is unquestionably a series highlight for perfectly exemplifying Clone High's chaotic sense of humor. Even if the episode it comes from is uncharacteristically dark, like it's a whimsical holiday special and everything. It's got plenty of memorable moments, but I don't know. Proceed with caution on this one, maybe? It's got a lot of, violence that kind of interrupts the flow just a tad. And don't get me wrong, most of the time it is very funny, but I think there could have been a different angle taken with making fun of the holidays. The scenes with Mandy Moore and Joan really explain my problem here because both plots feel like they're from 2 separate episodes, if you catch my drift. Still, when they're combined, it makes for a very distinct watch, especially for a Christmas special. Joan proves that, hey, maybe women can play basketball. Topical. Even if the commentary is a bit par for the course considering this type of show, the comedic aspect alone raises this episode above others for me. Seeing JFK genuinely come to terms with his sexuality is also kind of interesting and leads to some unique character moments, even if what's troubling him is clearly just Joan in disguise. It's also worth highlighting this is the first appearance of Toots, who is one of my favorite secondary characters. Even if the writers almost always use him for blind jokes, his small appearance here where he's genuinely concerned about how Joan is doing is just so wholesome. This also contains one of the better Gandhi side plots. The reveal of the rival mascot being a genuine living creature who's capable of unspeakable horrors never fails to crack me up. There's a lot to like about this one. It's nice. Oh yeah, part 1 of the season finale, and it's time for the prom! At this point, the audience has been following these characters long enough to know how each of them would react to something like this, but it ends up being a joy to watch anyways, just for the places it goes. There are some truly absurd moments here, occurring amidst all the stress that comes with your average high school dance, which can be hard to juggle, but this episode nails it. Every joke that doesn't involve John Stamos manages to move the plot along pretty nicely. Also, it's a huge relief to see Abe actually start acknowledging Joan's interest in him, and the scenes towards the end where he can't decide between her and Cleo end up raising the stakes even higher. Despite the writer's tendency to mock stereotypical televised teen melodrama, they actually seem to fully understand why it can be engaging to some viewers, including me. Great start to an even better two-parter. This is hands down the wildest episode of this entire show. Like, if you aren't prepared, this one will seem really outlandish. Well, maybe that's a stretch. There's clearly a basic plot structure, which involves the 4 main clones creating and premiering their own movies, but the amount of nonchalant, chaotic energy that's present in the dialogue, the sequence of events, and the jokes, it's honestly a fever dream, but I was laughing the entire time because it just gets so convoluted at points. You just have to experience it to really understand where I'm coming from. Also, this episode has...
Say what?
Masterpiece. I can't stress this enough. The first 5 or 6 minutes of this episode is peak Clone High. It perfectly sets up everything you need to know about these characters and how their dynamics are going to work off each other. Not to mention, it is just ripe with laugh-out-loud comedic moments. It pulls out all the stops. It's hilarious. If I were a first-time viewer back when this show was airing, I would be instantly hooked. My only problem is how unbalanced the flow of the final product is. Like, comparatively, the rest just does not hit that golden streak of jokes. Unless you like JFK washing his hands for 10 seconds or, Eleanor Roosevelt as a creepy gym teacher. Yeah, I bet you didn't remember that one. I'm just saying, not every joke lands, but still, it makes up for it during the party with plenty of quotable moments and the incorporation of some high-stakes drama. The love triangle, or I don't know, quadrilateral this show would continue to build on, starts off really strong here, and it's hard not to empathize with these characters when they're feeling down. I really appreciate how early on everything was established. It's an iconic first episode, definitely one of the best of any cartoon. But what could be better? It's only episode 3 and the show is already aware of how short-lived it's going to become. I freaking adore this one. It contains everything I love about this amazing show. Both the comedy and the drama manage to work off each other extremely well, and all 3 plots, while they are jam-packed, end up suiting the story. Okay, maybe not the Joan one, but it's still a funny premise for her to think she's hearing God. Plus, it doesn't distract from the main conflict for too long. Despite a few minor gripes, it still remains a highly engaging watch from start to finish. Apparently this one was super controversial on Twitter because it focuses on Gandhi, the wacky comic relief, being diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, its hyperactive cousin. And look, I understand why this ruffles some people's feathers. It's an adult animated piece of media from the early 2000s with a Tom Green cameo of all things. It could have aged better, but honestly, if you're a well-adjusted person, it's really easy not to side with the mob saying it's a disease, because it's not. And the episode itself even states this because it's not. Like, give it some credit, it really could have been way less tame compared to other, more obnoxious television programs during that time. One of them starring Tom Green.
I think my parents really like lesbians. So to show my parents how much I love them, I've turned my parents' vehicle into more than just a vehicle.
And look, I'm not even going to say his appearance here is the peak of comedy or anything, but it's just Tom Green being Tom Green. Like, have you seen Freddy Got Fingered? Also, notice how he crashes and falls out the window like this, even though he's in a 1-story building? Where was I going with this? Point is, this is one of my personal favorite episodes, and nothing can make me change that. Moving on. Man, where do I even begin with this one? Everything the first part built on comes to a head here in one of the show's most cohesively written episodes. It's insane to see all the growth these characters go through during such a short runtime. The scene with JFK just talking to Joan, no jock behavior, no puns, all of the feels. Every scene at the dance just feels so climactic, and it's all written so gracefully. I'm not even going to mention the cliffhanger ending, but let's just say it leaves just enough room for a continuation, which the idea was thrown around and speculated for years, and now that it's actually happening, I can't wait to see how it's going to pick up from here, especially because the government employees come off genuinely threatening, and it all could have been avoided if Butlertron just spoke up sooner. To be fair, I've been there many times myself, so maybe this cartoon robot was justified in his actions. What matters is this episode is a perfect conclusion to the original run of this series, and it's one of the best, period. Classic episode, just classic. I don't think there's a ton of new ground to cover in terms of saying anything new. It just captures the perfect balance of off the wall and legitimately emotional. And I do mean that. This is genuinely worth a watch despite Ponce de Leon not being the most interesting or fleshed out clone under the sun. He's only there for like 7 minutes. But seeing the way his death affects the other characters, especially JFK, is really something. Again, I think it's more substantial just to view this episode on its own because its accomplishments are clear as day, and it's really easy to see why it's a fan favorite. But in my opinion, none of these match up to the fucking this one. I'm not even gonna waste any time. Before rewatching this one, under the context of scripting this video, I already knew how much I loved it, but just to make sure I asked myself, is this truly the best episode of Clone High? And then I pressed play, and of course, obviously, what kind of a question even is that? This is a damn near flawless piece of adult animation, the apex of Clone High's chaos. It's one of 4 episodes written by the series creators, and out of all of them, this one just hits all the right notes. They know exactly what they're doing. When the plot summary of your episode involves your characters smoking raisins and banding together in a psychedelic musical/rock opera to overthrow a mad scientist who's ruling over the PTA alongside a demon voiced by Jack Black, you know there's something special going on, and the way it's all executed is honestly top-notch. Pretty much all of the jokes end up working, not to mention it's obviously the show's most ambitious concept, and need I mention Jack Black. He, of all people, fits the show's style of humor so perfectly. It's a match made in heaven. Also, shout out to the split-second text and all the hidden messages that only Phil Lord and Chris Miller would think of putting into a show like this. It's genius. To sum it up, Raising the Stakes is the ideal Clone High experience, and undoubtedly the show's peak in quality for me. Well, there you have it. Every episode of the original series ranked by me. Clone High is going to remain one of my favorite shows until further notice, because beyond its fair share of full-length episodes, even the few lackluster ones, there will always remain an endless array of quotable moments, creative ideas, and above all else, iconic characters. All that's left to do now is wait until the reboot comes along, which has no visual material of any kind released publicly as of now, but considering the track record of these guys, it's not hard to assume it'll be very enjoyable. I'm looking forward to more of this stellar series soon. I'm Idiot Boy, and I will catch you later. Peace.